Okay, so the way it works is that we will meet here in the class once a week, and we will discuss your progress. There will be no kind of lecture as such, but we might review some papers, and I may bring some discussion onto the class from next week to give you a feel of what it is to do a kind of this size of research project. So the specialization is kind of like doing a small research project and then writing about it. I on the page for the course there are some topics which you can choose from, but you can choose something else as well, as long as it relates to mobile, peer-to-peer, distributed computing or cloud, something that doesn't fit into games directly, because then it is Simon's course, or doesn't fit into web because then it's the web course, although we're not probably gonna run web specialization, so web is okay, welcome here. Uh, it's different than last semester course. In this course we don't deal with different topics. You will be dealing only with one topic, and you'll be doing it yourself. So you will be focusing on one area and kind of digging into it, and then writing a report on it, and then answering questions in the oral exam about that, right? So you don't need to know about each other topics as much, but it's good to know about each other process, because you're going through the same process, right? So you have to do a lit review, and knowing how you did the lit review will help you, and so on, right? The same about the writing. So even though you don't technically need to know about each other's work, it's good to meet together and discuss it, because then you learn what the process is about and how to overcome some of the obstacles together, right? But we will have like one-on-one discussions with me or some other supervisors as you progress with your projects, depending what you pick. So as I said, there is a short video about the course, so I will kind of repeat most of the things, but not everything. So please watch the last year, it's like 10 minutes, which discusses the course. Today I want to, which is not on the video, I want to talk a little bit more about the topics. So last year what we did, we just let everybody pick whatever they wanted, right? And it turned out to be quite hard, because you don't really know like how to scope a project for about the size of the course and how to go about it, right? So what I thought to do this year is I will tell you about some of the projects which happened in the past, so it kind of gives you an idea. And I will also explain more about the spectrum of the projects that we are looking here at. So first about the spectrum. So if you are interested in technology and you, let's roll back. Let's say you're planning something for your master project, right? And you need some technical solution for it, or you need to know if this particular technology can be suitable for what you are envisioning for your master project. Then you can do like a technology exploration. So you can learn more about a particular technology or particular set of algorithms or particular libraries or particular things, which will give you an answer whether you can use it or not for your master project, okay? So you can, instead of doing like a proper research project, you do more of a technology exploration and technical report on the technology. So one example which we had in the past was a person was investigating what is possible to be stored using Google and Apple health services, right? How it is organized, how it is being stored, how difficult it is to store and retrieve data, how secure it is, all the things related to health, personal health data, using the available off-the-shelf solutions on Apple platform and Google platform, right? So you may say it's sort of research in quotes, like I'm gonna do research on those things, but it's not really proper research. You don't really have any hypotheses and so on. You just kind of are exploring what is technology capable of, what are the limitations, what is possible, how the data formats are organized, how the data is interchanged, how much the person has control over the data, and how much is stored locally on the phone, how much is stored on the cloud, and so on, right? And then you end up with a report which answers all those questions, right? And this report may help you in your master project if you were to do something with mobile health on what's kind of already available, right? What are the limitations? What are the challenges? How to make it more secure? Or how to make it in such a way that the data is yours, not Google's or Apple's, right? That the big cloud provider doesn't have access to it. What would need to be encrypted? So you may have some research problems at the end of the process, but not at the start. And you use this course to do this kind of exploration, right? So that's kind of one spectrum, that you do a technical exploration of some technologies, and then you write up a technical report which answers a bunch of questions. On the other spectrum, you may say, well, I'm kind of interested in doing some research on, I don't know, iris recognition or something using mobile cameras, right? And then you read papers, you read reviews of what's been done before, what was the accuracy. You can do kind of a meta-analysis of what's possible or not based on research articles, right? So you're not developing anything, you're not tinkering with the technology yourself, you're just reading, thinking, reading more, and writing, right? So this is sort of a pure research, kind of a scientific inquiry project, right? That you will be writing about something based on evidence from others people research. And of course, you can do something in the middle. So you can have a research topic in the head, but you need to do some prototype and some experiment to provide evidence for your hypothesis, right? So this is something kind of in the middle. So you do develop something small, test something, and then write about it. So you can have a pure project based on lit review. You can have a pure project based on tech review, or you can have something in the middle. Most people do something in the middle, heavier on one side or the other, right? And that's fine. So I don't want you to tell me today yet. I want you to think about it, and you will tell me after next week, okay? What you're thinking of for this course. But you can tell me roughly whether you know or not what you want to do for your master's. So how many of you already have some plans of what would you like to do next semester? Anybody knows already or not really?
Kind of, but not really.
Okay.
Just a rough topic area.
Okay, so what is your topic area?
Potentially VR.
Okay, yeah. How about you?
I'm not really sure, but I was wondering for this course,
Mm-hmm.
are you allowed to go into ethical
Yes.
usage of
Yeah.
mobile devices?
We can do ethics, yes, as well. Yeah. That for ethics you don't have to develop anything usually. That's fine. Just research. Yeah, it's possible.
I had suggestion about PKI topic, but I'm not really sure I want to do that. So
Okay.
I'm still
Exploring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. How about?
Adaptive learning in VR.
Mm-hmm.
How changing environments could optimize
Learning. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was thinking about doing something about service-based architectures or something like that, but since the web course is not running, I'm not sure anymore.
Yeah, so that's fine. I mean, if you were to do something with service-oriented architectures or with architectures in general or with distributed systems, that's fine. I mean, we can do that in this course.
Okay.
So you can come up with something helping you with your master project here as well. Ethics is fine. You would have to have something to do with mobile, but that's easy, right? I mean, if you're talking about ethics in computing without including cloud and mobile, you're probably missing majority of the problems. So that is probably easy. With VR and with adaptive VR, it depends, as I was discussing with you, it depends like what you really want to focus on. The VR tech fits better with Simon's course for the advanced game tech, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to find something suitable to do here and over there, right? So we can discuss that and we can partition it. Of course, you cannot get credits for the same work in both courses, so it would have to be somehow separated. But we had courses like that in the past. I mean projects like that in the past, that students were doing something with VR systems, but there was enough to warrant kind of research here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have a clear idea yet. I hope
Okay.
to have that in the next couple of months, but
Yeah.
as of now, I don't have any. If it were in mobile, I guess the most interesting thing to me is the different sensors and different to use that both as a measuring tool and also as an input
Mm-hmm.
method.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about looking into maybe how gamification can affect mobile social networks,
Mm-hmm.
or perhaps human input devices on mobile phones
Mm-hmm.
or something.
Yeah. So those are kind of perfectly fitting into the theme. So I will talk a little bit about it in a minute.
I actually don't have a clear idea,
Mm-hmm.
but I was thinking for a particular mobile could be like the security or privacy issue thing.
Mm-hmm.
For like data transfer could be on.
Yeah.
Like, I actually watched one of your videos and you were talking about like data transfer via sensor or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
So the security issues and ethical stuff like that.
Yeah.
In this field.
Fits well.
I don't really have a clear idea either, but for mobile, I'm thinking something with location-based
Mm-hmm.
tracking services.
Okay. So yeah, so when you're planning what to do in this course, as we were discussing before, try to think about how can you help yourself with your master project by doing something now. So if you have some questions, or if you need to develop something, or if you're not sure about something, you can do that in this course, and then you have something to start with or to work with towards your masters. So one good project which we had in the past was a person wanted to do something with handwritten with handwritten text, and how to digitalize it, and how to kind of transcribe it into the machine text, right? Using mobile. So he used this course to build a prototype to see how efficient the current state-of-the-art algorithms are on the modern phones, and what can you do. And it turned out that you can put together relatively easily an OCR system which scans single letters and has very high accuracy, but scanning sentences and kind of like a text, like if I have a letter, and then partitioning it into the words and then into the letters, that turns out to be kind of unsolved problem. So if you have the isolated letters, then the OCR is relatively well solved and it works really well. But if you are to split it into individual words and letters and digitize like a letter, handwritten letter, that's actually a challenge, right? So a potential master project on top of that would be kind of a gamified system where people are kind of playing some sort of game for helping the computer to split the sentences and words into letters. Because once the letter is isolated, then the computer can easily transform it into the digital form, and recognize it. But if you have kind of a letter, like aligning the sentences and lines and so on, that is kind of hard. Like human help would help. Eventually, he did a different project, but for this course, it was kind of a well done project. Then he spent some time developing the prototype and testing how well it behaves, right? Another project that we had was to do with analysis of social networking using mobile phones. Like, for example, if you were to convert Facebook into purely mobile peer-to-peer system, what would be the bandwidth and network requirements for a system like that to actually work properly, right? Is it possible? Is it feasible? So we put up some hypotheses like, okay, suppose an average user puts so and so number of messages a day, and we excluded images and video, what would be the bandwidth requirements for a group of friends of up to, say, 30 people in a network of 10,000 people to do this in peer-to-peer fashion. And well, after calculations and so on, it turns out that it doesn't scale very well. So for larger social networks, it kind of blows up. It's like, gigabytes of data that you have to transfer every day. But for relatively small, close-knit circles, it works okay. So under certain circumstances, for a normal group of friends, you could have a couple of megabytes per day being transmitted back and forth from your phone, and you could have a distributed system that manages that with no video and no images, just text, right? So there are some limitations, but at least it kind of was feasible. And then he went to do the master's project, and he kind of implemented a prototype. So he implemented a peer-to-peer social system, which was having some security considerations and some and no central server to store and distribute information, right? So that was another kind of a good project, which led to a master project. We had one girl doing an iris recognition. So she did an analysis of the state of the art of the iris recognition on the mobile devices and like web cameras, and what are the differences and what are the pros and cons and what are the limitations. So she did like a lit review on that. So there are kind of a number of different things you can think of, and the challenge here is to scope it so we can finish in 3 months, right? In fact, we want to finish those specialization courses a little bit before the end of the semester, so you have time to do the project and advanced project work, right? So as Rune was talking about during the kickoff, we starting heavy with the specialization courses, and then we want them to kind of finish a little bit earlier, and then you'll be doing your project planning and your advanced project work towards your master thesis more heavy towards the end of the semester, right? So what we will do is we will discuss some of the projects that are interesting next week. Today I will tell you a little bit about the areas that are interesting from the perspective of potential supervision and research that is going on in the department. And you will try to brainstorm and think of what would you like to do, and we will discuss it next week as well. The discussions are not streamed because we want to keep them kind of informal, so we don't stream it. But if we are discussing papers or if we are discussing some general methods, then they will be recorded and streamed for the remote students. At the end of the course, you will present your paper to the group. So you'll have sort of like a 10-15 minutes presentation about the research that you've done or a demo that you want to show, and then you will submit the report. And the report is expected to be 8 to 10 pages, like a workshop paper, right? This type of quality we would like to achieve. And I mean, I don't expect you to submit it to anything, but at least we will pretend that you're trying to target a particular workshop, and then you prepare a paper following some formatting rules and so on, and that will be kind of the deliverable. And then you will be graded on that deliverable. It's 60% of the course plus the presentation, and then we will discuss it at the end of the course with somebody else in a form of oral exam. But as I said, oral exam is only about your work, right? So you don't need to study what other people are doing in this course. So we will ask you about methodology. We will ask you about, how was it to write it? How was it to do the research? What have you learned? What was easy? What was hard? How can you improve doing that for a larger project, which is your master thesis, right? So this is like a very mini research project. Then the advanced project work is again sort of like a mini master thesis where you have to do lit review and everything kind of related to doing a research. And then next semester you're gonna do it again, but for the full semester, just dedicated work, right? And those two, the advanced project work and the specialization, can be building blocks. So if, as I was saying, if you're thinking for a master project something bigger, like let's say you're thinking about some adaptive VR things, you can do the VR part with the specialization for the games. You can do some adaptive learning, like how to collect data, how to analyze what to use for the adaptive learning using some sort of a mobile or sensory systems. How, you know, what sort of data would be relevant for you to be able to adapt. And then for your masters, you put it together and you talk about the adaptive VR learning systems in general, right? So here you can carve a slice which is helping you to do the bigger thing for your master project. We can kind of discuss it individually depending on what you're planning to do for your masters and here. It doesn't have to be that you're doing here something for your masters. So you can just do something here and then just drop it. We had students like that. So they did some exploration of some things here and they decided that that's fine. They've learned some things, but that's not something they want to continue or use for your master's project. And that's fine as well. Okay, so any questions so far? Okay, so there is a list on the website of different topics, but on top of that, I want to highlight three main areas. So one area obviously is mobile cloud and the changes which happen to the way we do computing in general, right? So anything to do with mobile or cloud are kind of interesting, and it's a very big spectrum of things. So you can do some analysis of gaming, you can do some analysis of monetization models, you can do some analysis of the impact into social or ethical aspects of society because of the cloud and mobile computing. I was giving an example because we started the cloud course this semester, and I was giving an example that some novel phenomena kind of occur because of the cloud storage and the centralized way Google, for example, collects data, right? So Google is a search engine, one of biggest, which collects queries from people. And one of the side effects of that is that they actually know from which countries different queries are being asked. So there is this analysis of what are the taboo topics which people don't talk about in particular society, but they ask Google about those topics because, you know, in privacy of your home, you are anonymous, you can kind of ask. So they not necessarily know who is asking a question, but they know that from, let's say, India, there is a lot of questions about that particular thing, which is kind of a bit weird, right? And it turns out that that's kind of a taboo topic. Like, people don't talk about it. You don't talk about it with your friends, but if you know to learn a little bit about this, you ask Google, right? So it's sort of interesting. I will put a link into the different queries people were doing in different countries because it's a little bit awkward. Most of those are, of course, taboo topics, right? So, but it's kind of an emerging social phenomena, right? We learned that a particular topic is taboo in India because we have Google. If we didn't have Google, we would never learn it. Why? Because nobody talks about it, because it's a taboo topic. By definition, we would not learn about it, right? So it sort of uncovers some hidden truths which are otherwise impossible to find out, right? Another one, interesting one, was the soldiers have smart watches and they run around their bases, right? And it's all stored in the cloud. And then suddenly all the military base camps are mapped because, you know, there are publicly available tracks of where those soldiers run in their free time, right? So again, and some afterthought has to happen that certain things we have to like prevent leaking out. So yeah, cloud, mobile, social, all sorts of different things. That's kind of a big one, and that's really what this course is about. The second one is sensors and smart devices, smart vehicles, smart, aviation systems, and so on, smart homes. We have a research project downstairs with the security department, and they are developing a kind of a cyber range, which is like an environment for students and military personnel to check and test different forms of attacks, different forms of defense, different exercises, digital and physical, different risks, and so on and so forth. And one project that they are doing is that they try to build like a smart home, a model of a smart home with some sensors, some electricity meters, smart bulb, light bulbs, maybe smart fridge, and so on. And then, ways of disrupting life of people, or maybe they have cameras in the house and so on. So they building using Arduino and some Raspberry Pis and some sensors. They building a model of some smart environment, which then is connected to this kind of cyber range, and then you can provide some attacks, or you can provide some defenses or some exercises. You could imagine that happening with the mobile devices, or with some virtual environment where you have some room or some kind of a modeled physical artifacts that generate some impulses, some signals, and also can be acted upon, right? You can also use it as an input device. So for example, you could imagine kind of a form of exercise where you are participating in it and you're kind of a source of information. So you pretend to be some sort of weather condition or something. And using your mobile device, you're kind of putting data into the system, which then feeds into the rest of the simulation, right? So anything to do with simulations, anything to do with sensing and actuating on the environment, or collecting data. There were a couple of interesting projects, for example, of mapping the noise in the cities, because you're walking with your phone, and if the phone from time to time opens the microphone, senses the decibels of the noise around, and then shuts it down, you can map, roughly speaking, of where the noisy places are in the city, for example, from the car traffic or whatever, right? We did similar project with the aftershocks after earthquake. So if you for the night, if you put your phone on the table, and the accelerometer just detects the vibration of the phone, you can kind of observe when the aftershocks are happening. If you have different phones, let's say you have area, and then the aftershock happens. So the aftershock will kind of be like a wave. It will kind of flow through the city, right, or through the area. And then different phones will record it at different time. So if you can collect the data from the phones, you can kind of say of where the aftershock initiated and when it kind of spread, right? So you can map it. We can say, okay, it probably was centered here and then it spread around from that point, right? So we tried to do that. It was partially successful. The problem is that in big cities, like when the truck goes by, the noise, sensory noise the truck generates is bigger than the aftershocks you are sensing, right? So you have to counter a lot of noise that happens, someone walking in the room and so on. So the phone sitting on the table is not as sensitive as the proper seismic devices that they mount to detect those things. But yeah, it was kind of interesting conceptually. One project that we did with sensing was also in New Zealand. They had, I'm not sure if I told you, but they had the big deal about third-hand smoking. And second-hand smoking is if you're breathing the smoke from someone's using a cigarette, which you are not smoking yourself, right? So someone else smokes a cigarette, and then you breathe the air they breathe out. So it's called second hand. And third hand, what do you think is that?
Person breathes it in and breathes it out again.
Yeah, that's second hand.
Yeah, but like you breathe that in again.
Oh yeah, okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, that kind of would make sense. Yeah, by analogy, that would make sense. Yeah, but they refer to third hand if you're breathing the cigarette, the nicotine from the furniture or from the things that got stuck into, right? So for example, someone is a heavy smoker, and smokes in the car, and then you go into this car and he's not or she's not smoking, but you still breathe the residue which is of smoking, and that's called third-hand smoking. And they introduced the law for preventing people to smoke in public spaces. They can only smoke in private spaces like homes. But then they said, if you have a child, you're not supposed to smoke in a private space neither, because then the child is exposed to a second or third hand smoking, right? So they wanted to measure how many people smoke in the cars and drive kids with the cars, right? And that was kind of difficult to do. So, a couple of students developed an app where you can sort of observe people passing by in a car, and then you can click if you see a person smoking or not. So you stay there for a few minutes and you just collect some traffic data, and then if there was a child or not. And then if people do that, it would just be a sample, but then you can extrapolate the data and kind of guesstimate of how many people are smoking with the child in the car, right? Yeah, I mean, the mobile device is not like the mobile aspect is very minimal, right? It's more based on the eye observation of the outside world, right? But it was kind of a tool that was helping to kind of collect the data. So that's the second one. So the first one, general, mobile and cloud. Second one, sensing, sensors, smart devices, smart things, and how they kind of, how they shape the way we perceive the outside world and how we can learn from what they give us. And then the third one is the kind of the opposite of the cloud. So if you think about the way the mobile computing is progressing and how much power do we have, like, we have phones with 8 cores these days and with like almost a terabyte of storage. We have something which used to be called a supercomputer a few years back, right, in our pockets. And then everybody has it, right? So we have a lot of potential of doing stuff in a kind of a peer-to-peer fashion. So exploring those challenges, those frontiers of peer-to-peer computing and kind of mobile computing, blockchain technologies, distributed social networks, and so on. So that's the third area that is kind of interesting and that we would like to kind of focus. So those are the three main areas that I would be happy to work with you guys. But if you have something else, that's great. We can always find some experts or some specialists in something that will kind of help you, right? So if you were to do something with security, there are people downstairs. We have Basil, we have Espen. They are interested in those smart homes, smart devices, integration. We can do something with them. If you're interested with VR, we have Simon, of course, and with gaming. If you're interested with web technologies and architectures, we have Christopher, we have Rune. And if you're interested in blockchain or some distributed peer-to-peer or mobile peer-to-peer systems, I will be very happy to help you. So yeah, that just think, read some things, and I will prepare some example projects for next week that we can kind of go through and discuss with some paper already, right? So kind of a written paper. We had some projects related to personal assistance and using mobile phones to help with planning and collecting data. So we had a student who was analyzing the behavior, like where you go about, for example, in a week. So where you spend time. And then there was a kind of AI module which was trying to predict, like saying, oh, usually on Mondays morning you were going for, a building, like, and then it kind of reminds you that usually you were there, right? And then if you were, let's say, so that was the idea. You say, I need to go shopping and I need to post something in the post office. And then the manager was kind of looking through your history and was saying that, Usually on Wednesdays you are going to swim in the Fjellhall and then you can do the shopping on the way because it's on your way, right? So it could kind of give you some smart hints of how to optimize your to-do list based on the behaviors that you've been doing before. So it was kind of a good idea, really difficult to do. And also like collecting all the data is kind of difficult. Going around town, you can collect the GPS information, but it's a little bit unstructured, like you just have traces, right? It doesn't mean that the computer knows why you went to that place on that day, right? So it kind of needed a bit of a human input. And then the AI was, he got stuck a little bit on doing the, how to make sense out of the information he collected. So he collected a lot of raw data and then trying to put it into some form of ontology and extract a useful information and kind of semi-automatic way turned out, of course, a kind of a challenging problem. So he continued doing it in the master's project, and it was kind of okay. Ended up with a prototype and some location and timing based system that could do some predictive planning. Right, so that's what I can think of for now. Any comments or ideas?
I was wondering if, for example, I would like to learn Azure,
Mm-hmm.
then what kind of a topic I could choose to, because I don't know anything about the Azure as a cloud, so can I take something that is more like a learning?
Yep, you could, but you would, yes, so you would need to think, apart from learning Azure, what is that interests you? Is it like, would you like to learn more about machine learning, for example, or deep learning, and use Azure as a platform to do some deep learning? Or is it like you're interested?
So many options.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there are many different options for exploring the technology in the context of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you could analyze, for example, monetization models, right? You would say, I would like to learn more about Azure, but I will have a project which analyzes how different cloud providers monetize on the platform. And then you analyze, okay, how Azure is doing it, how Google is doing it, and how Amazon is doing it, and you compare what they charge for, how their pricing models work, and so on. So it depends, like, you would have to attach something to it and then use it as a driver to dig deeper into Azure, right? So all the machine learning related topics are good because almost all those big platforms provide you some facilities that you can run some learning tasks on those platforms. So then you can explore the platforms yourself to learn more. You could use some business models or some monetization models. I was not involved in that project, but there was an interesting dilemma. So if you're building something for a cloud, you're writing a service which will be deployed on the cloud, right? Let's say you're building something for Azure, okay? Then Azure will charge you. I'm not sure exactly how, but they will charge you for some CPU time, for some I/O access to the database, for some access to the network, and for some storage. And they have different levels of storage. They have like very immediate storage, sort of like RAM. They have storage which is more like a disk, and they have long-term storage which is the slowest, but it's the cheapest, right? So now you have an application, you're coding some sort of app, and then let's say it's, I don't know, booking tickets, okay? And you're booking the tickets and you have 1,000 users booking the tickets, right? And you can write the same logic slightly differently, and then you will pay much less because you're caching some things and then storing is cheaper than accessing the database, for example, right? So you can optimize. So there was kind of a question of how to do it, how to implement something that it has the lowest cost on the particular platform, right? Yeah. Because there are different ways of achieving the same goal. but some are very expensive and some are very cheap, right? And the platform kind of dictates how you should code it. So it's not the efficiency of the algorithm, it's not the O complexity, it's the cost, right? So coding for the cost of the platform might be kind of interesting to explore. And then you would learn the insights of Azure, because you will learn how Azure is charging for different things. It's the same with storage. They typically give you kind of guidance. So they say, if you need to access data really fast and frequently, you have to go for the most expensive one, but it's the fastest and so on. But it's the most expensive. So if, for example, you expect certain queries to come rare, and then you allow users to wait a little bit, you may store stuff in this long-term storage instead, right? So organizing that and optimizing it is kind of a problem. People don't know how to do it, and it's a bit of a black art to do it well. Yeah. So sure, you can explore cloud providers. You just need to come up with some sort of objective, some question that you can explore using the platform. Could be to do with encryption, could be to do with efficiency, could be to do with pricing models. Yeah. Could be to do with integration, could be to do with lock-in. Some platforms are more robust, so once you develop for that one, you can port your stuff to the other one. Some are very platform specific. Other questions? Ideas? So how is 1 o'clock on Fridays working for you?
It's okay.
And you have time until 2 or until 3? So we could have it from 1 to 3, technically.
Yes.
All right, so let's agree that we will run this session from 1, and if we need to, we will go to 3, but if we don't need to, we will finish at around 2. And we will meet regularly, and on some, yeah, you generally don't need to prepare anything. If I have something, I will prepare it. I may email you and say, could you read this paper before the class? So I may give you some homework to read before the class, and you will, for the next week or two, try to come up with some project description, a short paragraph saying, oh, I would like to do this, okay? And then we will discuss it. We'll discuss the scope. Is it too small or is it too big? And then you will go off and start doing that. And then we will have some discussions about your progress, what you've been doing and reading or whatever. While I'm kind of giving you some ideas in the first, next 2 sessions probably. And after that, yeah, we will be doing reviews of what you're doing. And then towards the end of the course, as I said, you are expected to give a presentation, right? I would say 15 minutes plus discussion after. So we may have like 3 or 4 in a day. So we can kind of wrap it up in 2 weeks probably. Yeah. Yeah, we're finishing. Okay, so if there are no questions, I will close for today and we will meet next week and I will email you what to read for next week. Great, thank you very much.